Hello everybody! Infernape Shinjo here, and welcome back to part 3 of my top 10 Pokemon Generations list. Whatever you call it. In this video, I'm going to be listing off my top 10 Generation 3 Pokemon. That is Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And honestly, this is going to be the hardest list that I've made yet. Because while in the first two generations, I could just say, oh, I like this one because of the anime, I like this one because of the games. In this generation, there were just a lot of them that were just like neutral for me. Nothing really spectacular, at least in my opinion, but nothing really great about it. Only except a few standouts. So it was harder for me to pick 10 for this list, but I managed to find 10. But let's start this off with number 10, which is Chimecho. Now, Chimecho is just there for a lot of people because its stats aren't that great. A lot of psychic types outclass it, and it's hard to find. But honestly, the only reason that I put it on the list at this spot is because I remember playing Ruby and Sapphire and going up to the very top of Mount Pyre, just running around in the grass waiting till we found a Chimecho, and then when we did, it was a momentous occasion. And I know that Chimecho isn't the best in battling, but just those memories alone are why it's at number 10. Number 9 is Blaziken. Now, just like my other list, all 3 starters are on this list. You just have to find out where they are. But honestly, for me, I never really found anything just great about the Torchic line at first. But then looking at Blaziken, it's just a cool design. Obviously, it's part fighting, which is a reason that I like it so much. But even the fact that it got a Mega Evolution before the other 2 starters did, that's just cool. Plus, Harrison using a Blaziken, which nobody knew about, to defeat Ash in the Johto League. Number 8 is Tropius. Now I bet I know what you're thinking. Shinjo, are you just picking random off-the-wall Generation 3 Pokemon for this list? And honestly, I might be. But Tropius is just a cool design. It's so giant. It got bananas hanging from its neck, which I find hilarious. And in later games, it gets Dragon Dance, but it still doesn't see much competitive use. Half of the time, I just want to use a Dragon Dance Tropius just for the lulz of it because nobody else wants to do it. And of course, like Chimecho, Tropius is a little bit hard to find, and at the time, both of them were a standalone Pokemon. But in a world where everybody is getting a Mega except the ones that need it, I feel sorry for you, Tropius. Number 7 is Crawdaunt. And honestly, a little part of me inside feels kind of bad for not including Kingler in the Kanto list, but I just like Crawdaunt's design. It looks wicked, it looks intimidating, it's got that giant star on his head. He really looks like somebody you don't want to meet in a dark alley, even though you might not because he's water type, and he needs water to survive. But like I just said, Crawdaunt is a water type. You know how much I love my water types. So that's why he's at number 7. Number 6 is Gardevoir. And there's not really much that I can say about Gardevoir that other people probably already haven't said. It just looks elegant, it's good in battle, it becomes a Psychic Fairy in later generations, but with the setup of Calm Mind and Psychic, it can kick your butt in a battle and look good while doing it too. And honestly, I'm a little bit scared of looking up the images for when I'm making this top 10 because of all those sick individuals online that decide to Rule 34 Gardevoir to no end. Don't look it up, trust me. Number 5 is Armaldo. Now, like I mentioned in the Kanto games, me and my brother always chose the opposite fossils. But my brother went with Anorith, and for me, I'm just like, I'm not the biggest fan of Lileep or Cradily. And looking at Armaldo, he just looks cool. Kind of like an ancient Scyther, kind of. But even having a type of Rock and Bug, which was very scarce at the time of Generation 3, I guess this just proves that I prefer Pokemon that have a lot more offense to defense, which is why I prefer Armaldo to Cradily. Number 4 is Absol. And honestly, it's basically the same thing as Chimecho and Tropius. It's a base Pokemon, no evolutions, no pre-evolutions, hard encounter rate, but it just looks cool. Obviously, I remember that episode of the Pokemon anime where there was that Absol and everybody thought that it was bringing disasters, but it was just warning them of disasters and stuff like that. I think that's actually lore in the Pokédex too. But then you throw in its Mega Evolution, which should be part Fairy, but it's not. Considering that I didn't include any Dark types in Generation 2, where Dark type was introduced, I feel like Absol is a good representation of it. Number 3 is Sceptile. And, of course, like I mentioned already, all 3 starters are here, and Sceptile is at number 3. And it's actually funny that whenever we picked starters, my brother always went with Sceptile, or Trico, I should be more specific. And of course, all 3 starters did have, at the time, signature moves. Blaziken had Blaze Kick, and Sceptile had Leaf Blade. And I'm still flabbergasted that even back in the day, me and my brother thought, oh, Leaf Blade is physical in Generation 3 where there was no physical special split, and Grass type moves were only special. But even looking back on it, I find it amazing that Sceptile is Ash's second starter Pokemon to evolve all the way. Number 2 is Rayquaza. Now, like I mentioned in my other videos, I have to have an obligatory legendary Pokemon on my list, and I am absolutely in love with Rayquaza. It might be because my younger self thought that it was Shenron from Dragon Ball Z, or it just might be that its design looks wicked awesome. But also, the first Generation 3 game that I started out with, if I remember correctly, was Emerald, and of course Rayquaza was on the cover for that. And nothing against Groudon and Kyogre, they're cool legendaries, but I just like Rayquaza. I don't know, I've never been the biggest fan of green Pokemon, at least from what I can remember, but I just like Rayquaza. He is giant, he is intimidating, he's one of the few dragon types that I automatically think of when somebody says, hey, name a dragon type that you like. Rayquaza is always up there with what I mentioned. And finally, number 1 is Swampert. Now, you can basically say that this is the same reasoning as Feraligatr on my other list. He's the first starter that I chose, probably the first one that I got to level 100. Water type, I just love those water types. And although I do have to admit, Swampert's design was kind of odd in the original Generation 3 games, but it's cool. Even when I was younger, I remember drawing Mudkip as religiously as I drew Pichu. Honestly, the reason that I chose Mudkip as my starter was probably because of that scene from the very first episode of Pokemon where Birch needs help saved from a Poochyena, and May just looks at Mudkip and just says, use water gun, and Mudkip splashes the water in her face. That is probably the reason, but it might also be that it's a water type. But there is my top 10 Generation 3 Pokemon. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my other videos coming out. Because I still got a couple more generations to cover for this list. And up next is my absolute favorite generation, so look forward to that. Momentai. 大体エスタ第365日分の学びをカバンに詰め込ん